Hello everybody and welcome to a second episode of the Week of the Royal Blue podcast. I'm your host Conor O'Neill, joined today by Joe Thomas and Matt Jones to chew the fat on all things Blues. Lads, it's been quite an eventful 24 hours maybe. I think we probably knew around this time that things were building up to something.
We're going to say 24 years.
It feels like 24 years, doesn't it? It's been very eventful. Obviously we had the news yesterday about the Premier League charge and the hit. Masters has been speaking to the DCMS committee. Obviously, there's been an update on the 7-7 potential takeover. And of course, we have a Sean Dyche press conference as we speak today, this Tuesday afternoon, to preview the game at Crystal Palace. Although I suspect off-the-field questions will once again dominate the agenda. Joe, we'll get right into it. Obviously, you, Gavin B's done an instant pod last night, I think it's safe to say, after the news was confirmed by the club in the Premier League. But as you sit here now, hours on, what are your thoughts, what are your reflections on what transpired yesterday?
It's difficult to comment too much on the latest allegations made against Everton without knowing the full details of them. We haven't got the finances. The Premier League aren't going to provide the numbers until the case. Everton aren't going to provide the numbers for some time. I'm still surprised that Everton are in this position. As we discussed yesterday, the financial year that drops off the record this time round was one of heavy losses. And from what we can see publicly from what the club did in the 12-month period that ended last summer, which is a new period under scrutiny, publicly what we can see is that it was largely a continuation of a theme, which was, sell players, reduce the wage bill. Now, it started this year in question started with the spending under the summer of Frank Lampard. And, there was a significant commitment to a significant outlay in that. Obviously, we know that, as we all have become experts in football finances in recent years, we know that, if Amadou Onana signs for £30 million over a 5-year contract, then that's £6 million on the books and things like that. But we had that outlay under Frank Lampard, and I think that one of the things that I've written into everything since the 10-point deduction is the fact that there was a genuine threat. I wrote a story in November, straight after the initial deduction, saying there was a genuine threat of Everton being in a difficult position again, not because I had any insight to the finances, but because the words were there within the report of the panel. When they were paraphrasing the Premier League's case against Everton. One of the mitigating circumstances Everton put forward was the fact that there had been a positive trend of spending, that they'd continue to cut their cloth accordingly. And the Premier League said, well, look at the summer of spending under Frank Lampard, we disagree with that. And I mean, those were chilling words, because you see in black and white in that. We're all sitting here thinking everything, the product on the pitch is getting worse and worse and worse. The club's plight on the pitch is getting worse and worse and worse. And then but you at least hope that it's a short-term remedy that will provide the long-term foundations for a better, more sustainable Everton. And then when you see those words there, you think, well, is that actually the case? Now, even then, I'm still a little bit wondering. They sold Anthony Gordon, 45 million. Again, the way in which these things work, that all comes onto the book, so you think that would cancel out most of the commitment that they to spending in the summer. The Moise Keane deal would have come to an end, and obviously there was a significant fee for Everton for that. There were other deals as well. So, whilst it was always a possibility, I was still surprised when the news came out yesterday, and I still am surprised now. And I think the underlying that surprise is almost a little bit of fear, in the sense that what if there's just something lying in those accounts that we just don't know about? Like I said this yesterday, I still kind of believe this now. I don't think that the Premier League has handled this case. I don't think the Premier League is implementing the profit and sustainability rules particularly well. But given the battle and the reputational fight it's had since Everton had the 10-point deduction, I would be astonished if there's a serious case that Everton can put forward against these new allegations of double jeopardy. We know 3 of the 4 years that come under this new case, this new allegation, have already been dealt with by the 10-point deduction. Surely the Premier League will know the first thing that Everton will do if there's a chance of an overlapping, double punishment for the same crime. Surely the first thing they know that'll be the first thing that Everton's lawyers come after. The Super Silks will come after. And again, just how sad is it that we're here talking about amortisation, football finances, and what lawyers the club may have hired. We should be talking about completely different. We've got an FA Cup replay. Just had a good draw against a very good side in Aston Villa. But it's just there's a big gap now. There's a big vacuum of information that will last for a couple of months, and within that period, it's difficult to kind of know where to set your stall because, we don't know where the finances are. We're not going to find out for some time. I want to be in a position to defend Everton as much as possible. I don't think that the Premier League have handled this case particularly well. I do think that there is a lot of legitimacy within the concerns over the handling of the case, within the treatment of Everton. But there is also a little bit of me that is still very wary of the fact that, as we have long discussed on this, and as we wrote a lot last year, I can't stand up here and say this is a club that's been particularly well run over recent years, and therefore I can't also say that without any information from the club or the Premier League that there might not be something in the finances that means that a lot of the arguments that we are going to have are actually made redundant.
I was just going to say, Connor, sorry, to me, I think from what the club have said, on and off the record, it feels like, Joe speaking about that potential vacuum there for 2 months. I feel like we'll probably know a lot based on what happens with the appeal from the first one, because the club said in the statement themselves, didn't they, yesterday, that it looks like their mitigation for the first one, the meat of their case in the appeal for the first breach is going to be sort of copied and pasted into what they're going to say about the second one as well, and that's kind of going to be their line of attack on both of them. So in one sense, if Everton come out of that appeal for the first breach and all of a sudden it's wiped out, or they get a suspended sentence, or it's down to 5 points, then that could give you a bit more hope, I think, going forward into the second one. But if that appeal doesn't work, then all of a sudden I think everyone's going to start getting a little bit more nervous, because like Joe said, not much has come out about this second one yet, and it probably won't until we get the independent commission report. But the club seem to be hinging a lot on this appeal and that working twice to sort of get us over the line. But you're right, Joe, aren't you, in the sense that I was just thinking there when you're talking about what's his name, Super Silk. I mean, how long until we're doing stories on our site being Forest and Everton battling out for January lawyer or something like that instead of actual players?
Both apparently they're quite happy with the choice of legal options, aren't they? Yeah. Newcastle got the Super Silk, is it Nick DeMarco?
But it's just it's. I know people all like football and like different parts of football, but we sat there this morning, like you both said, we've got a cup replay tomorrow, and sat there watching the CEO of the Premier League speaking to the DCMS at Portcullis House, and you just sat there thinking, is this what we're all about now? Is this where we are? And I know that there's regulation in the game to try and stop cases like Portsmouth and Bury, and these things are important, but it's not why I like football or got into football, and I'm angry at the Premier League for putting us through this, but I'm angry at the football club as well for being in a position where I'm sure people will be looking at this going, we've made a scapegoat of. They're trying to use and have this as an example because of independent regulation, and they're scared of all that. I agree with some of that to a certain extent, but in some ways as well, Everton have kind of nominated themselves a little bit as a scapegoat by the way in which they've been so poorly run. And I think to even be close to the £105 million mark over those 3 years in what is the most cash-rich league in the world, one of the biggest sporting leagues in the world, that in itself is a worry. So it's just grim, isn't it? And I can sit here now and hopefully we can get some points back on the first appeal. Hopefully this second one amounts to nothing. Hopefully we can stay up this season. But then, we were saying before, Connor, we could be kicking around in June in our shorts and get a notification on our phone saying Everton have been hit with a points deduction and relegated. Like that's where we're at now. And like, and even if we get through that, we could be taken over by a group that reports about them missing payments, transfer bans, penalties, concerns every single day about them. And like, that's why, like, sat here now, like, I think there's plenty to be positive about with the manager. I think this team have got a good group of lads and have shown good things this season, but there are just these huge black clouds that are just there, and it's going to take a lot, I think, for Everton to get out from under them unscathed, be it through these two charges and getting through them and staying afloat in the Premier League, or getting suitable owners for the foreseeable future. Because I just look at both of them now and think, how are we going to deal with this? Like, what's the route out of both of these situations?
And it feels that when one black cloud departs and there arrives not long after, doesn't it? You think of the on the pitch stuff was always a struggle.
Yeah.
And obviously that it looked like it was turning around and that, but obviously now off the pitch dominates. But Joe, Matt says there about anger and fan frustration and stuff like that. It's a two-way thing, this, isn't it? Because obviously people are right to have a gripe with the Premier League over the way things are, saying the lack of transparency around how these things have come to fruition. But again, the football club have put themselves in a position where they're there to be shot at, haven't they? And they're kind of the guinea pig that the Premier League needed, I think, to make a point out of.
I think so. I think that's probably what we're going to get more of over the next few months is what we've had over the last few months, and that will be arguments around financial technicalities, largely based on the stadium and interest payments and whether they can be claimed back, whether they can't, and whether Everton are only in this situation because of they've embarked on too many ambitious projects at the same time, trying to compete with footballing's elite and build an iconic new stadium. But it's whilst a lot of that conversation will be over the small print, really Everton are only in a situation where the small print matters because they've spent so poorly over such a sustained period of time. Really, in the grand scheme of things, the numbers over stadium interest and stuff like that pale in significance to the numbers that have been spent in the transfer market. And it was a clumsy analogy that I kind of used to Matt before we got on here, but like it kind of works in my head, so hopefully it works on here as well. And I say those stadium interest payments, they're like the I say the froth on top of a pint. They might be the bit that spills over and takes Everton over the edge, but the real damage is done from all the beer that's underneath it. The 80% of the glass that's already filled, and in this case, it's been filled with several years, and it feels daft talking about them because they already feel so distant. But these are the years of the reckless and irresponsible, spending in transfer markets, hiring and firing of managers and directors of football, and the compensation packages and things like that. Everton don't end up in a situation where things like the interest and that on certain loans matters so dramatically if they haven't spent so poorly elsewhere, and that is part of the issue. And then my overriding fear or feeling at the minute, I think, as I got up this morning, is one of almost a bit of sadness, really, in the sense that, as Matt alluded to there, I feel like Everton, and separately Everton supporters to a certain extent, are trapped in slightly separate cycles of despair and doom, neither of which there's a clear way out of. I started this by saying I can't guarantee there's nothing in the accounts that will make us all rethink the unfairness of the second charge when it comes around. But in terms of what we can see from publicly, from what the club have done, it's clear that in recent years there has been a change of tack. There has been a move towards, from the bits that are visible to us, a move towards more financial maturity. We've seen the kind of the constraints that Kevin Falwell has had to work under, for instance. And if you're a club that's already got itself into a mess, there has to be a way out of it. And if you look at, and for Everton to have been charged again, it suggests, well, selling players isn't enough. Reducing the wage bill by getting rid of the squad, fringe players, isn't enough. Building a new stadium, which will in time create greater revenue to strengthen your financial position, isn't enough. So, like, how, like, I think a genuine question that we may still not know the answer to at the end of this, whatever the result of Everton's case is. Once a club has got itself into a difficult position, what is the route to get out of it? And that's probably the question that's where the fears of double jeopardy and the unfairness of being charged in consecutive seasons comes across, because you've had the first punishment. Well, then, as a club, and it feels like Everton have tried to right some of the wrongs. And just as it's getting up, you get kicked again, just as you end up after a summer in which you spent no money other than a handful of millions on an Nana Danjuma loan fee, where you've sold your brightest academy player who, now that he's back from fitness, is banging goals in the Championship again for a team that will probably be competing. Well, they will be competing in the Premier League next season. Whether they're doing that against Everton is now more on Everton and what happens off the pitch than it is on Leicester City in their promotion, I think. Where you sell a player like Alex Iwobi, who was a ever present under both Lampard and Dyche on the final day of the transfer window. They've done all that, and if that's still not enough, then what do they do? If there's not a way out of it, then just as they're coming up, despite all that, you have Dyche there, and he's created a side that somehow, and I still don't understand how. I think he deserves such immense credit. Like, I don't think that anybody could have done a better job than Dyche has done in the 12 months. Like, I don't think it would have been possible to have kept Everton up and then got them any further than what they are currently now, which is a mid-table side that by rights is 11 points from safety. So just as you're starting to emerge from the depths, you can get another kick. It just seems, how's that right? So how did the club escape this? I think it's a genuine question that the Premier League need to answer. It's one thing encouraging clubs to comply, but once they have breached it, how do they get out of it? And the second one is, from a fan perspective, just listening there again, and look, 777 are an issue that perhaps have kind of gone under the radar over recent weeks because things have there's just been so much to do. But they need to come back onto the radar. And they will do in the Echo, in the coming days and weeks, because they have to, and that's almost a bigger picture here. But obviously, we just hear them there. You hear Richard Masters in the select committee talking about how we've had several months of this, and there's still weeks at best away, and there's a suggestion that they haven't provided the answer to all the questions that the Premier League want. But what's the best case scenario here? If you look at the clubs that they currently own, now 777 will say that they're in what is a long-term process to rebuild clubs that were distressed assets when they got them. But if you look at Vasco da Gama, and if you look at Genoa, and if you look at some of the other clubs, the stories that their fans are living right now, and some of these have been owned or influenced by 777 for more than a year, is one of the same. It's points deduction, or it's the threat of points deductions. It's the imposition of transfer bans. It's questions over finances and whether they're affording the bills and whether they're complying with financial regulations. So it's very, very difficult to see. Whilst 777 might say that's a journey and that's the start of a journey, if that's the best case future for Everton, it's just more of the same for Everton fans. But then what's the alternative if they don't come in? Well, look where the current, or what remains of the long-term regime at Everton has left the club in. And who knows who's waiting in the wings if it was to be another third party that was to come in and swing. And that's, like, it feels so defeatist and downtrodden, and obviously don't want it to sound that way. And I think we can all take a huge, huge amount of comfort and passion and pride in what the supporters have done so consistently for so long at Everton, whether it be the coach welcomes and the support that helped keep them up under Frank, or whether it be the demonstrations and the activities and the protests and the way that is so emphatically and yet calmly made its voice known since the deduction. We can take a lot of pride from that. But how do we end up out of this cycle? I don't know what the answer to that is either. And that also worries me. I know that there will be a lot of people that are listening to this, and their dominant emotion at this moment will be complete anger, and they'll be incensed at the fact that the club have been punished, potentially going to be punished again for breach of these rules. But trying to step back from a wider perspective, it's bleak at the minute. And the one thing that offers, or other than supporters, the one thing that offers a little bit of hope in this is the players on the pitch and what Dyche has done with them. And that has already been undermined by a 10-point deduction. And it could be further undermined. You know, it could get to a point where it doesn't matter how many points they're going to get this season. It could end up with another deduction. Or, and this is another thing that's worth thinking, they might not get another deduction, but the independent commission in the last case said a fine for wealthy owners doesn't have any impact, so it's pointless. Well, the only other real option is a transfer ban, and I'm telling you, this summer a transfer ban would probably be worse than, say, another 3 points deduction for Everton, because if you look at that squad, obviously Danjuma and Harrison go out. It's already a small squad. They go back to their clubs. Everton wouldn't be able to sign them. I need to work out. I don't know what the issue is about. The rules are about handing out new contracts to players that are out of contract. But even if you can do that, the only way they're going to get a squad together next season is by giving
players who don't want, who
players who deciding I've got them into this mess.
Like the Gomez, isn't it? Who'd be on like what, six figures salary.
Are they going to have two fullbacks approaching 40 again next season?
Yeah.
Obviously, Coleman can stay as long as he wants. We all agree. Like, I mean,
like that's like like speaking more as like a fan now than like a journalist. It's like that's where I look at the rest of the season, and you know, Joe's right. Like, fans have been amazing throughout all this.
They've kept the last 2 years.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you can't forget.
I mean, there's been indignance, there's been anger, but it's all been done in like a good way, hasn't it? It's not like, I don't think it's crossed over into anything like reckless or ranty. Like whenever I've heard like, you know, any of your podcasts or people speaking about this, or you know, going on Sky or BBC or whatever like that, I think it's been done in like a really good way. But it's this potential retrospective points deduction of thing now, which is, I think it's just going to loom over everybody, isn't it? And like, it made me think of like, you know, in F1 where sometimes they just take 10 seconons off somebody, and like
time penalty.
It's the worst sport in the world anyway. Like even without that, there's a reason why people think it's so boring. But where do we, as like again as supporters, like where does the joy come from now? Like between now and the end of the season. Like maybe the FA Cup, I'm sure we'll speak about this a bit later on, but maybe the FA Cup's different because, you know, they can't take 10 points off you in the FA Cup.
Can't kick us out.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe they can. We'll have to see. But it's like, say if we, you know, we've got Liverpool at home, haven't we, between now and the end of the season? And I'm sure if we won that, it'd be a good day, and everyone would be made up of Goodison Park. But like, what would that count for?
It means nothing.
Well, yeah, like what does that actually mean? Like, let's not forget in all this as well. You know, this is meant to be a time where we should be getting to Goodison Park and like soaking in,
savouring
and enjoying every little bit. You know, there's that stadium's where like we've all grown up watching this football club. You know, the prospect of going away from there anyway, as much as the stadium on the front looks great. You know, for me, the thought of leaving Goodison Park anyway in normal circumstances, having an average season, is heart-wrenching. And like, you know, the thought of walking out that ground for the last time is horrible. Like I've been trying to go to the ground and savour it and look at different things and all this sort of stuff. And then we've got this hanging over all that as well. And like this is tainting that. So not only is it just ruining the matchday experience anyway, potentially between now and the end of the season, because we don't know if the wins we've got are even going to matter. Like this journey we're on towards the end of this amazing stadium, this place where we've spent so much of our lives, where people have spent all of their lives, is being tainted by it as well. And it's like, it's so heartbreaking. It does generally get me quite upset. And I was saying this like yesterday, like I think for me, like if Everton were to go down, and it's not a situation that I you know, obviously I don't want to see that happen, but that in itself is like a life event. Yeah. Like I'd want to be like in the ground next to me dad and go through it together with the people who we've sat around for years, or I'd want to be in the pub with my mates who are going and watch the away games there with, to sort of go through it, because it'll be horrible, but you know, football is about shared experience. It's about
the good and the bad.
It's about the good and the bad and going through it together. And we've not had many good moments down the years, but those bad ones have always been a little bit better because you've got that person from your family next to you, or you've got your mates there with you to go through it with. You can have a drink and you can get through it. You know, I remember after the 4-1 loss to Newcastle, being in the pub afterwards, and they put like a funeral playlist on. And it was gallows humour, but like, you know, it's what it, you know, those are little moments you remember. And but the thought of like Everton being relegated by getting, similar to what you were saying the other week about when you were off and you got the notification for the 10-point deduction just on your phone, like what?
Yeah, I was actually out trapping.
Imagine that's how you find out Everton to get relegated.
Yeah.
Like, it's June, you're out doing your weekly shop, and you get a notification on your phone, and that's it, you're gone. Everton are relegated, and like I suppose this is a separate issue from whether Everton should be punished, whether the punishment's too severe and that sort of stuff. But this can't be the way things are done.
I seen a tweet last night, and it was someone said, goals are now given or ruled out by computers, and clubs could be relegated in the courtroom.
Yeah,
and I thought, well, that is modern day football, Premier League football in a nutshell now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like every way it's gone, like what happens on the pitch, what you say there is probably insignificant in some respects. Like you say,
sterile. The game's been sterilised, hasn't it? And I guess as much as like, whatever the Premier League will say these rules have been brought in because they don't want another Portsmouth, etc., etc. Others who are a bit more cynical, maybe like myself, would say perhaps they've been brought in with a view to protecting the established order and falling in line with that. Whatever way you want to go about it, but I don't think this is ever going to work if you can have a situation where Everton can win on the last day to go a point clear of Team X, and then 10 days later they might go, well, actually, we're going to have some of those points back. I feel like how can anything have any meaning whatsoever as a fan going to the game when that's the case? It just dilutes it all and sterilises it all, and it's pretty awful, I think.
Joe, match lose today. Richard Masters was talking today in front of a DCMS committee. Obviously, he's the Premier League chief, the main man, and he made a very interesting update on 777 and the potential takeover and how long it could take before we find out whether they will be the new owners of Everton Football Club.
Yeah, I mean, he was asked how long it will take, and his answer was he doesn't know. I think it's important to start that, and it was later ended up being hopefully weeks. So, I think that we all know that a decision is looming on that front. It can't not be. They've already had several months of doing it. At some point, there's a hint that they haven't had all the answers to all the questions that they've asked, and that's unsatisfactory. Well, at some point, there has to be a line that's drawn, and you have to be in acceptance that if you keep asking questions, you're not going to get any answers, then maybe those answers aren't going to be provided, and you're going to have to make a decision. It's just one of many things just hanging over Everton at the minute, and like I say, 777. We need to return to this subject, and I think that as positive as it's been to see things like the political support that Everton have had in relation to the points deduction and things like that, I do think that it is worth at least trying to kind of focus some of those minds on what's it, because 777, if they come, will be here to stay potentially for a long time. What they do is going to have a huge impact, and obviously the status of the club that they inherit, if they get the green light, will be interesting. But things like what they're going to do with the stadium, we haven't had any answer on that. How they're going to fund it, where Everton going to sit within the model, all these questions that we were asking in November have probably taken the back seat because of for legitimate reasons, because obviously it's not insignificant what's happened to Everton in the 6 weeks or so since. But I think they do need to return to the table a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it didn't look good. It didn't look like a straightforward case that the Premier League are doing. It's not like they're saying, oh yeah, we're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and we're a little bit away. It looked like it was problematic, and that isn't great.
Even Richard Masters sounded a bit frustrated with them, didn't he? Like,
it was weird.
That wasn't a great look. I don't think was it really.
And listen, we can only take his word for it, but like everything he said was kind of on the same theme as everything that's been reported about them, isn't it? In the sense, things taking too long, delays, frustration, like it all kind of fed into that wider narrative that's being built up about them before they've even, but again, like Joe was saying before, whatever happens with 777, personally, I'm really concerned about them, and sort of put on Twitter jokingly before that Richard Masters seemed a bit annoyed at them. Does this mean it's not going to happen? Hopefully, but if they don't come in, Everton have taken a lot. Everton have loaned a lot of money off of them.
Yeah.
Everton have been letting them put statements out on the club side. They've been front and centre in the director's box for games. I mean, what's
got offers to Finch Farm, haven't they?
Yeah, like what's that all about? And it's like, and again, it goes back to what we were speaking about at the start. Like, and I think maybe there's this idea that if Everton get through these charges, then it's going to be like, right, big deep breath. Thank God that's over with. You know, they're having to loan hundreds of millions of pounds right now to keep the club going right now. And what does that say? You know, where's paying back those loans going to lead us further down the line?
And who would want to come in and take the club on if you've got to repay
If you're
all that back
indebted
to people?
Yeah,
I think that is part of the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
777 are clearly a problematic organisation. With question marks on how some of them run, how they're run, how they're financed, and their operating models. I'm sure that they will, well, maybe they will answer those questions, maybe they won't. They possibly don't have to us, but hopefully the Premier League in that case is doing a proper, rigorous, responsible job. But Everton's future, 777 have a big part to play in Everton's future, whatever happens, because they either take over the club.
Yeah.
Or they got £150 million on probably quite high interest rates that he's paying back at some point. So, I mean.
And if you want a prospective buyer out there, would you want to go and invest in something like that? It's.
Well, this is it, isn't it? And if you look at Everton as an asset, you're taking over a club that's got £150 million of debt to 777, similar to rights and media funding, other facilities as well, stadiums to finance and things like that. Your starting point is a huge expenditure. Like, it is impossible to pick up Everton on. Technically, it's impossible to pick Everton up on the cheap.
But these don't matter. They're very realistic things happening, though, aren't they? Like, people often talk and say, you can over sensationalise stuff, but this is all going on right now. Everton have had to lend a lot of money off 777 to keep going. The takeover is rumbling on, and they're now facing the Premier League charge.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I was looking forward to this week, just talking about like James Tarkowski's tackle at the weekend, like moaning about the booking, how ridiculous it was.
He got booked for Aston Villa's plays.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just just. I think like as fans, it's just. I don't know. Maybe this is a bit dramatic, but it's horrible when you feel like you've just got like no hope, isn't it? And like I think. After the first deduction and we went on that run, like you could kind of see a way out of it, and then you get, we get hammered, don't we, all the time with like different things from different areas. Like, we went on a 4-game winning run. Everyone was buzzing. We were in the quarter final of the cup, and then on the pitch and on, it does the daftest penalty you'll ever see. And
Decore gets injured.
Decore gets injured, and then every day in the you see on Twitter and on news sites, it's 777 have done this, 777 have done that. Then you get more reports about potential breaches and points deductions. Like, it's just relentless, isn't it? And like it just gets you down a little bit. And like, as much as like, going into this year, and I remember like after the points deduction, and like I remember thinking, right, I'm gonna try and be positive about all this. I'm gonna try and see this as a way we can all come together, all the cliches that we're all sick of now in regards to the deduction. And like, I was like, I'm going to make a conscious effort to try and be more upbeat about this football club, because after a while, I like this manager. And like, after a while with some of these players, I like these players as a group, really. And I think like that they are the two most important things. Going back to what I was saying at the start, like they are the things that I like football for. So I like these lads. I like this manager. So I've been trying to get behind them and be positive about them and give them as much grace as possible. But it's all the other stuff, isn't it? It just hammers you every day. And like every time you get a little bit higher about the team, you get slapped back down with something else.
Never get optimistic. That is the worst thing you can do.
If you don't ever have hope, Connor, they can't take it away from you.
Exactly, yeah.
But I mean, how depressing is that? Like, this should be a time where we are looking back at Goodison Park and its amazing history, and we should be sitting here going, wow, get me in that ground. Get me in that ground on the front. I cannot wait for that. But being brutally honest, I just can't get excited about it. Like, I get the train into town every other day, and I go past it, and I because of what's going on around the football club and because of what's going on with the Premier League, I just look at it now, and this is really sad, but I go, that's a great bit of architecture. It's a great building. But I don't really associate it. I can't really see myself sitting in there and enjoying a good Everton team in the top flight because of all the other stuff, because of all the bluster that's around now with finances, and going back to what we were saying before with Joe, and not feeling like there's a way out. Like, that's grim. Like, this should be like one of the most exciting parts of our history, and we should be going, wow, what an amazing stadium, what an amazing facility. And I just look at it sometimes now and think that's a big, impressive building. There's going to be a huge millstone around our necks.
We are live on YouTube, and people have been getting in touch.
Sorry if I'm just depressing everybody.
SR says, surely the cost of living has skyrocketed, yet the amount you can over hasn't aligned. Surely it's a good way to have this thrown out. Well, I think we won't know that until we see the first appeal will be on what.
No, but I think one of the points that the club is quite keen to make is the limits of losing £105 million over 3 years have been in place for the best part of a decade, and they haven't risen with inflation.
But Everton could have potentially raised that, couldn't they, and put it to a vote to change that if they wanted to.
Yeah. So like the club's perspective is one of the club's many frustrations over this is a belief that £105 million limit has been made redundant by inflation. But as Matt says, or alludes to there, these rules have been in place for a decade. All the clubs that are in the Premier League have known about them, and the 20 clubs are stakeholders in the Premier League, and if they genuinely thought that they want to make a case for them to be risen, then
They could have.
they could have. Maybe they did, I don't know, but if they did, they weren't successful.
Tony Nesbitt has also said, sorry lads, we've had a black card over us for the best part of a quarter of a century. Spot the goal scorer at the club. Which I think leads us nicely onto some football talk. I think we've chewed the fat enough over all things off the pitch over the yesterday and the first part of today's show. Because Everton are back in action on Wednesday night, an impromptu FA Cup replay after the 0-0 draw with Crystal Palace at the turn of the year. Just when Sean Dyche, after Christmas, thought he was going to have a nice little holiday, a nice little break, a replay with Crystal Palace was thrown right into the mix. Matt, it's a big game.
Yeah, I'm all in on the FA Cup now.
All in?
Yeah, all in. My main aim for the rest of the season would be go and win that cup. Because we might be sitting here in not knowing about relegation with a 20-point deduction.
At least we can look at the FA Cup.
Yeah, at least, yeah. Like I said, well, who knows? They might be able to take it up, but yeah, I just go all in on it now. It's like, this is the competition now. I think is the one, and to the end of the season, which surely cannot be tainted by anything that might happen or is happening at the moment. And I think, listen, the squad is short. Obviously, we appreciate that. We've got players injured. We are in a relegation battle, and it could get even worse. But I just want to enjoy something between now and the end of the season. And I feel like winning this game, potential winnable home game in the next round, all of a sudden, once you win those first two games in the FA Cup, you're thinking, you'll be 2 games away from Wembley then, or 3 games away from Wembley. And I want to have a good day out at Wembley, either working with you lads or down there with my mates on the ale, or want to get to a final, and have some kind of positive memories to take from this season. So I'd be going all out for this one. I'll be playing stronger side because we've got a big break after it. And yeah, just give us something to enjoy between now and the end of the campaign.
Joe, Everton shouldn't need any inspiration, in my opinion, for a cup win, because it's been far too long since we obviously won a trophy or even got to a final. But surely the perhaps underperformed against Fulham in the League Cup a few weeks ago, Goodison should fuel a little bit more fires to belly and want to right the wrongs of that night, because yeah, they went out on penalties and they were unfortunate, but I don't think that was Everton's best performance so far this season. Certainly from what we'd seen in the run-up to that game, was nowhere near the levels that we witnessed.
Yeah, Fulham was a big missed opportunity, I think. No, I mean, there was a pattern with Fulham there. I mean, they're basically Sean Dyche's Everton kryptonite, aren't they? They've won 3 times at Goodison Park in 2023, all against Dyche, didn't they? And obviously the next game in the league as well, so they're going down to Craven Cottage. And yeah, I was gutted with Fulham, but I also had sympathy for the players a little bit, because I thought that they'd been going through such an intense run, and a run that started with the points deduction as well. So it would have been a hugely stressful and emotive period for them, and that felt like it was a game too far. We then saw what a game too far really looked like when we played with Wolves, but that felt like it was just they were a bit hungover at that point from all the games that they were playing. It was a shame that it was on that occasion, and even then I still take some positive from Fulham, from the fact that despite playing so badly against a relatively capable team, they still somehow managed to drag their way back into it. They still managed to get that goal, took it to penalties. Unfortunate what happened since then, but they should need no motivation. Like Matt says, they've got a big break now after this game until, well, if they were to win it, they got a week and a half. So if they were to lose, then they've got about 2 weeks until Fulham away in midweek. But I think that we saw how much impetus and momentum that the Carabao Cup run, and they got to the quarterfinals in the end, but how much that provided to the club. I think that the everything the foundations for everything positive about the season on the pitch were laid in the week where won away at Brentford, got their first league win of the season, and then won away at Villa in the cup, and all of a sudden, okay, there were still more bad performances after that before things really got good. But it was like, oh wait a minute, this side can actually turn up and do bits. And as an away fan base said, they've seen 2 wins in a week away from home, and you haven't only seen two league away wins each season the previous 2. So it kind of like stirred the embers a little bit. And I don't think that the value of that can be underestimated. I think Dyche is clearly a competition that's close to his heart. Obviously, we got to the semi-finals with Chesterfield. And I fully expect him to play a strong side. I mean, there is another point in the fact that the squad's so small. There is only so many changes that he can make as well. And I know Dwight McNeil got on the pitch the other day, but I'd still be a bit surprised. I'd still be surprised to see him start. Probably your biggest questions whether you go down Beto or Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
That leads me nicely on to the next question, Joe. Because I was going to ask both of you, what do you do? Because obviously we saw at the weekend Calvert-Lewin missed a golden opportunity, a sitter almost to put Everton ahead. Who knows, they could have maybe saw that game up 1-0. Beto obviously come on, but didn't really carve out any real openings for himself. Matt, if you're Sean Dyche tomorrow night, who are you sticking by?
I think I'd stick with Dom. I was disappointed with both of them on Sunday, but I don't know what was up with Beto. It looked like he was in a mood from the second he came on at the weekend, and he was just usually when he comes on, there's huff and puff running round, but I don't know. He just seemed like he was just off on Sunday. But yeah, Dom is out of form and lacking confidence and needs a goal desperately. But I still think he'd probably offer us a bit more.
My worry with Beto is that I just don't think he's a very good off the bench player. I don't think he's got the tactical nous to come on and be able to make an impact. I think he runs round and it's a bit of a headless chicken almost. You think of the Newcastle game where he might get in behind and he might get one opportunity, but I don't think he has the tactical perhaps nous at this point to come on and have a real impact on the game and change and do something different.
I think that's quite an astute point, to be fair.
I just think he lacks that bit of intelligence to. It's just a bit chaotic when he comes on. I think, and sometimes it works. But I think in games like that,
wouldn't that make
tactical battle. Where's he going to?
Wouldn't that make him more aligned to being an impact sub though? I sort of feel
the chaos that he brings.
Yeah,
I just think it's just like in games like the weekend though, where it's a bit tactical and it's a bit.
Yeah,
I just think he looks a little bit lost.
Maybe it's more because obviously he's got to try and he's getting into a new league and a new group of players.
Of course, it's still early days, isn't it?
But I definitely think you would be right to say that Beto's best performances in Everton should have come when he started, and for that I think Brentford away, he was really, really good in the first. He's really, really good in the first hour and kind of laid the foundation for it to win Everton, and then got and was unfortunate really that Dominic Calvert-Lewin came off the bench to score and then started his good run of form. I thought Beto was good against Manchester City. I thought he occupied their centre backs really well. So he started that game, and he started the Forest game. He didn't have a bad game against Forest. He missed the big chance, but I guess we have to take some comfort from the fact that he got into that position in the first place. I'm with Matt though. I start with Dom because I think that the biggest remedy that Everton have for the problems that they face. And so many of the issues that they face are unknown. We don't know what's going to happen with the original points deduction. I'm pretty confident there'll still be a deduction. It might get limited. It might get reduced slightly, but I'm pretty confident it doesn't get wiped out. But obviously, there might be a new one after that. The biggest boost that Everton can get them can find for the rest of their season to strengthen their position for whatever comes off the pitch is a fit and firing Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He was crucial to that good run, in the kind of the autumn of last year, and Dyche kind of said this after the Villa game that the longer he goes without scoring, the sooner his next goal will come around. And there's a little bit of if something's not working, keep doing the same thing isn't necessarily the most sensible option. But I do think it's something that needs persevering with because Everton need him in form, and I think that certainly this season, I think Calvert-Lewin has far more to give than Beto perhaps does. Maybe that'll change as Beto acclimatises more to the league and the manager and the setup. But getting Dominic Calvert-Lewin in amongst the goals is the best remedy for the problems that Everton currently face. And I think therefore we should keep persevering with him. In the absence of, it's not like they have another 15-goal season striker on the bench, but in the absence of that, I think Calvert-Lewin carries on playing in the hope that he eventually plays himself into form. And I think that I've said this on a couple of podcasts. I think it's easy to look back on the last few weeks and think of, albeit offside, when he got played through against Wolves, tried to round Jose Sarr and didn't do it. He had the miss against Man City, it would have made it 2-2, it was a good chance, and obviously, there was the big miss at the weekend.
Did this allow goal as well?
That's what I'm coming to. I still think that the kind of, and again, it's this weird cruelty that seems to befall. Maybe it's just because maybe it happens to all. Well, it doesn't happen to all clubs. It's also, when you look at how
many club correspondents who probably would you have about 18 months, that's for sure.
When you look at how events conspire against Everton, whether it's VAR, whether it's profit and sustainability, whether it's injuries, whatever it is, it's all just a nightmare. It's all just one torrent of. One nightmarish, hellish torrent of misfortune. But if you go back to that Tottenham game, and I think it was a foul by Andre Gomez, but I think it was a foul by Gomez, but I think once the referee and the linesman don't give it, given the positions they were in, I don't think it should be on VAR to intervene in, because I think that was VAR then refereeing the game as opposed to, they're overruling things when the referee and the linesman can see it well. Put that goal away, lovely. If that goal counts, just imagine what it has done for the last 4 weeks. I'm not saying all those chances go in. Everton probably still don't get a point against City. City was superb in that second half. But they might have got an extra 2 points inside because he might have scored that one-on-one, against Villa. And you just look, it just feels like everything's conspiring against Everton. And to a certain extent, it is.
I would also start Calvert-Lewin. I think you've got to play your best players back into form, haven't you? Yeah. It's simple as that, and I think he's one of Everton's best players. Whether we like, whether people, some people believe he should do a bit more, but he's Everton's most prominent natural number 9 who can do a whole host of things other than just score goals. But yeah, I would also throw him back in. Lads, prediction time. Joe, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think Everton win tomorrow. I think 2-0. 2-0.
Are you feeling as confident, Matt?
Yeah, it feels like every time we play these, it's either 3-2 or 0-0.
Palace have been Palace have been the only. It's felt for a long time like Everton have been the side that a team that's struggling come to get their pick me up, and Palace weirdly, ever since they actually hammered Everton in the FA Cup under Lampard, since then they've been Everton's remedy, haven't they? They've had the 3-2 on the last day of the season against Frank. You had the 3-0 under Frank, which is probably the best moment of the high point of what he was trying to do there. Obviously, 0-0 at Palace under Dyche was a useful point. Yeah. Then they had the great win when Idrissa Gueye scored. And even the 0-0 in the first FA Cup game was a good result at the time. I thought
they were on side, they were comfortably better team. Everton, I thought in that game, and could have even won it when they had 10 men. So yeah, I'm continuing the theme. I'll go 3-2 to Everton.
3-2 to Everton.
Oh.
Yeah,
I will go 2-1.
Okay.
Is there extra time in this?
There is.
Yeah.
And penalty kicks if required.
In the snow.
An honour needs to get away from it, doesn't he? He needs to be number 11 on the list if we get penalties.
I think it'll be some poetic justice tomorrow and Calvert-Lewin will score.
Yeah.
After the first game when he was
got to go record against
Palace, wasn't he? So,
he's got to go record against Palace.
With the winner, games should be playing in because he, should have been sent off, etc. Comes back to bite.
And then the other poetic justice will be Onana scoring the winning penalty at Wembley, won't it? Of course.
Of course, yeah.
My God, I don't want to get to Wembley even thinking about it.
Imagine that winning penalty, shirt off, F master. Wembley, see you blue.
I will say, if that is the case, I think when he's walking up the ball, you'll just look at the Everton end and everyone off the head and hands going, oh no, what's going on? That's that flashbacks when Jagielka walked up for Man United and everyone was like, why is our centre-back taking this penalty? But he clearly dispatched. But
halcyon days then.
Yeah, they were the good times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, lads, I think we will leave things there. We will, of course, be back at the end of the week to look back on Palace and everything else that has gone on. The clubs obviously haven't had no game this weekend, but as always, there's plenty of things to talk about. There's never a dull moment with the Blues at the minute, is it? But for today, thank you very much for listening. You've been listening to the Road Blue Podcast.